Okay, so we're back live on the Jeffica YouTube channel. And I'm recording a quick video because I wanted to go over, do a quick metagame overview, of just some, threats you need to understand, what's going on in the tier, and, kind of who you really need to look at in the builder going into the format. So generally, I think the biggest and most important mod in the format is Iron Hands. It's just straight up, it's one of the, if you look at the list of, illegal fake out mods in the tier, I mean, the Gothitel's, okay. You know, um, you can theoretically use Persian Alola, and then Thwacky and Torracat are semi-usable, each both of them. But really, if you want good fake out, your best bet is just Iron Hands. It's just it out BSTs so many mons in this format that you might as well there's no real reasons not to use it. Well, there's one real reason not to use it, but we'll get to that in a little bit. It's just its fighting stab is so good. It's so bulky. I mean, you know why Iron Hands is good. It's Iron Hands. It's just a really consistent, really strong, really bulky mon. And it's really the only good fake out actually in the tier. So we have the other two the base 50 speed tier is really crowded in this tier. Because we have we have all three of Iron Hands, Bonnet, and Blood Moon as very relevant, very meta pieces. And those are all at 50, 55, and 52 respectively. So the speed tier, especially around 93, which is Iron Valiance. The speed tier you need to hit Iron Valiance in Tailwind. 93 is very crowded, especially for Hands, Bonnet, and Ursaluna, because they all go pretty fast. But the speed dynamics between the three of these are really important, especially when you're EVing. Because obviously Bonnet can spore them, both of them. Hands hits both of them really hard. Blood Moon, if you're Terra Normal Life Orb, you can OHKO Bonnet. I don't think you ever OHKO Hands with anything if they're AV, but use outspeeding it is still pretty nice. Especially if you have a partner beside you that can take care of it. But that really congested base 50 speed tier is really important, especially if you're going around 93. Because a lot of Iron Hands are going to be hitting 93, so because a lot of them run Heavy Slam to hit Iron Valiant and Tailwind. Because Iron Valiant is we're just gonna skip ahead a little bit, but Iron Valiant is actually one of specifically choice specs. Iron Valiant is one of the most important wall breakers in the tier. It's just one of the only real offensive fairies. You can do you can run E-Force next to in DD Mail. You can do Icy Wind and run it Pseudo Flutter main. You can do Trick. It just has so many stupid options. A lot of the times it can also run Booster Speed with Coaching or Encore. It just or even T-Wave. You can do the bold flutter set on this guy without it being the bold flutter set. Sometimes they even run mixed life orb with Moonblast CC Gleam. I'm not personally a big fan of this set, but it definitely can work in a lot of situations because there's a lot of mons that you really appreciate being able to hit with CC as opposed to Aura Sphere. Heatran specifically does a very good job, or CC does a lot better of a job into. And then but yeah, the base 50 speed is pretty congested, and so a lot of the times a lot of Blood Moon, most of them run Life Orb. I don't think AV is definitely usable. But I think a lot of them now are running max modest. A lot of them are hovering around that 104 speed tier. Timid is okay. I think you miss out on too many calcs for it to really be worth it. But generally 104 I assume when I'm around facing Blood Moons, unless they don't have Tailwind. If it's just Trick Room, then it's obviously it's slower, but if it's in Tail Room, I always just assume that the Blood Moons are max speed. Bonnets can kind of go anywhere. You can go really slow and just maximize your bulk. You can also go really fast. I've definitely seen max speed Bonnet ran before, just because you get the jump on a lot of random stuff that doesn't run a lot of speed investment. So getting max speed on this guy is kind of important. But yeah, so these three are definitely probably the most important pieces in the meta. because like obviously Spore is just so forcing. Like this guy is the only fake I'm on the tier. This is pretty much Blood Moon is pretty much the damage ceiling of the tier, right? Like there's not really a whole lot that actually is able to contend with it outside of like Iron Hands. Then we have Okidogi, who if you it's kind of been lurking here in the background next to these three. I mean if you know anything about Okidogi and DOU, you know that this guy like he does a really good job of beating like specifically Iron Hands. Like Okidogi specifically beats all three of these really well because it has like a really good defensive profile. And if you look at like even later in line, it's really able to take on Iron Valiant really well because it actually, unlike Iron Hands, it actually resists and it can hit it super effectively with its stab. Like bulk up is definitely usable on this guy. I'm not the biggest fan of it. I think it's a little inconsistent. But generally, Assault Vest is really good. It does like genuinely compete with hands for the fighting type slot, which is like kind of insane thinking about it, right? But especially because like hands already overlaps with with Thunderous, who we'll talk about later. So like running AV Dogi allows you to run both, which is really nice. But generally, it's just like there's a lot of fighting types, or there's just a lot of mons that Okidogi does a very good job of taking advantage of in the tier. Sinistra is also a pretty impactful mon because just there's a lot of like, I mean, I don't know if you noticed like Iron Hands, Brute Bonnet, Blood Moon, Okidogi. There's a lot of really fat pieces in this tier. The tier is like pretty centralized around a lot of setup mons. There's a Volcarona in the tier, who's like pretty solid. There's Moltres Galar, especially who's probably like one of the basic. I think he's Moltres Galar is probably the best setup sweeper in the tier. Just because nasty plot sets are really consistent. I mean, yeah, even like as we mentioned before, like bulk up Okidogi as well. There's just a lot of like, there's just a lot of really strong setup Pokemon. You can use next charge Chaladon for like assault vest stuff with stamina. There's just a lot of like really good setup guys that Sinistra does a very good job of like killing and supporting. The only thing that Sinistra really has to worry about is that it does like, it definitely does just die to Terra Normal Blood Moon, and it also like it also just like gets fucked by Bonnet really hard. However, like beating hands is like pretty important. Like hands they used to run Ice Punch when Lando T was in the tier, but now it's just been phased out in favor of Heavy Slam. And with Heavy Slam, they still don't really hit you very hard. Like if you're running Bolt, it's like still a 3. It's like a 3 or 4 hit KO. In City. So it's really good to be able to like redirect a lot of hands attacks and keep your partner safe from them. Machagacha is obviously just a broken move, and Trick Room is just very good speed control. Speed control is really important in this tier because there's a lot of like obviously if you're looking at it, there's a lot of like min or slow to middling speed mons that really need help, which is why like Thunderous Incarnate is so good. They're in Prankster in this tier. I think almost all of them run goggles. I think it's kind of a throw in the builder not to run goggles if you're running Prankster, just because you get bitched by Brute Bonnet so hard if you don't run goggles. You can maybe run like you can run like offensive special. It's like maybe usable still in this tier, but I'm not super convinced about it. But generally like Prankster goggles is the standard. You just have a lot of really good options, right? Like obviously Thunderwave. The meta game is a lot of the top like breakers in the meta are like specially oriented. So Eerie Impulse is just so good into like slowing those down, like slowing down Ursalunas. You slow down the Iron Valiants. You can slow down Sinistras if need be. But like you have a lot of opportunity to just like sit on a lot of the special mons in the tier, and it's really good utility for the format. That like if we didn't have Thunderous, I think Valiant and Bloodman would be a lot harder to check in the builder. It also just has like some pretty good offensive coverage too. You can do stuff, and Tauntaunted as well is obviously really good. You can do stuff like Electric Rain, and like Sunny Day. Like Thunderous is one of the primary manual sun abuser or sunsetters, because there's some like pretty good like actual manual sun advantage or mods that can take advantage of manual sun, like Walking Wake. Choice Band Slithering like hits really hard in sun. There's just a lot of like high quality mods. Oh, Great Tusk as well. There's just a lot of high quality mons that take a lot of advantage of manual sun. Electric Train is really good because you block Bonnet's Spore. You also there's a lot of Quark Drive mons in the tier, so getting like a free Quark Drive speed on the Val is really nice. But yeah, it's just Thunder's utility is just really like really strong in this tier right now because there's a lot of special offense, especially with Blood Moon and Val, and like being able to slow that down is like really really valuable. Obviously, Valiant's like we went over it a little bit earlier, but it's just the best offensive piece in the tier. It basically just out damages the vast majority of the tier, and like yeah, it's just the goat. Like it just kind of it's really hard to answer in the builder because a lot of the times it's going to be paired with something like a DD male. So not only do you have to deal with a combination of like Moonblast, like Stab, Terra Fairy, Moonblast, and Expanding Force, which is like just really really hard to answer in the builder because you can't like Terra Poison your way out of getting hit by Val Stabs. There's like there is one mon like Metagross AV Metagross specifically is like really good into specifically Val and DD and is like generally pretty underrated because of like if you look at some of the ones we mentioned like Okidogi, Iron Hands, Sinistra, all get hit really hard by even like Thunderous. I'll get hit really hard by Metagross. So Metagross is also something like definitely to consider in the builder. Because it's just so good at beating those like really strong offensive cores. But yeah, Val is just like one of the most threatening mons in the builder, generally. And in game too. It's really hard to answer like stab super effective fairy type moves in this tier. And then we have Talonflame and Jugulus. I'm gonna talk about them together basically because they're pretty similar as far as things go. They're just like the two most common Tailwind setters. Sometimes you see Moltres setting Tailwind. Like you can definitely do Tailwind Moltres. I think a lot of the times I prefer Plot Tailwind. Like something like this, and you run like a really bulky on it, and you can set slow Tailwind while also still getting the benefit of Nasty Plot. You can also just do Flying Stab, Dark Stab, but I think you get a little bit out damaged. Like I think your damage ceiling is a little bit too low for my liking. But generally it's still viable. Juggy is really good because like Hurricane hits so much in the format really hard. I really don't think you can run Air Slash. Like it's usable, but I think you really want you need the damage ceiling increase from Hurricane. Hurricane just like slaps basically everything in the tier for like at least decent damage. Snarl is really good at slowing down all the like aforementioned special threats. And obviously you just run Tailwind, right? Talonflame is good. It has a lot of like really good defensive utility, like Taunt, Wisp, especially are like really solid and really like they're just really strong options overall. You can even experiment with more niche stuff like Feather Dance, as well to like any physical attackers like Iron Hands or stuff like that you can get around Wisp. It's just like really consistent like priority talent setter. It's like one of the only ones in the format. You can I will say I forgot to mention you can definitely use the bugs. Illumise and Volbeat are definitely like super usable. Murkrow as well as usable. I think Murkrow is pretty good generally just because like you're actually able to use if you use Eviolite, it actually is pretty decent bulk. And it's actually stronger than Talonflame. So like if you Brave Bird, it actually does do like some pretty decent damage. Like actually having like bona fide access to Prankster, like Taunt, and like Prankster, Quash as well. It's just really strong on it. It just has like a lot of utility that Talonflame doesn't, which I think is kind of nice in this tier. But yeah, generally there's some decent options for Tailwind. There's nothing like too centralizing. There's no like Tornadus. There's no Whimsicott. So like there's no real centralizing Tailwind setter. You have to kind of just pick and choose what's best for the team that you're using. But there's definitely a lot of like decent options. You can low-key experiment with something like Tailwind Suicune. I don't think it hasn't been like particularly fleshed out. I don't know what kind of team you'd actually use it on. But like as a bulky Tailwind setter, like it has a lot of really good tools. Like Scald, Snarl, Icy Wind, Tailwind are all like really really good tools. We also have stuff like weather modes are like really good. I already mentioned Archaludon. Ninetales Alola. You can use it alongside like Specs Iron Bundle. I should have mentioned Iron Bundle as well. Like Iron Bundle is it's definitely the speed ceiling for the format. Booster Bundle. Sash is usable as well. I think Booster is like so good into the mirror that Sash is a bit greedy at this point. But generally it's just a really like solid, consistent piece. It's another mon that you really, really appreciate having stuff like Iron Hands and Okidogi to check. It's usable. It's definitely usable in Snow. I think it's a lot better outside of Snow. I'm not super convinced about Snow personally myself. There's also like Baxcalibur. So, I think like DD Baxcalibur is pretty solid. or like ST with Clay Rush. Even outside of Snow, I also think like again Baxcalibur is kind of better outside of Snow. I'm not super convinced on Snow as an archetype in the tier. Generally, like I think a lot of the abusers are just better without it. However, it's definitely usable. Like it's definitely usable. You can try like like fan room kind of structures with like Cine, Torcat, Ninetales or whatever. Yeah, we also have Pelipper. So we have Pelipper, Archaludon, who are both obviously like yeah, you can obviously do Pelipper, Archaludon things with that. Archaludon isn't like the strongest just because there's a lot of like really good counterplay to it in the tier, like Iron Hands, Blood Moon, Bonnet, Okidogi, Thunderous, even Val Jamma trades with it pretty well. There's still Moltres, if they're like really bulky nasty plot, like a lot of nasty plot spreads run like Calm. And like the Calm Moltres with Terra can absolutely just like plot up on Archaludon and it gets like a little bit suspect for the Archaludon player. Generally I think this guy just kind of gets like overwhelmed damage wise a lot in this tier. I'm not super convinced on it either, but it's definitely very breakable and very underexplored. Because I'm not a big fan of it, so I haven't particularly put a lot of time into building it. However, I do think there are a lot of hurdles to overcome with Archaludon specifically. Sturdy sets are like okay. I just don't think they damage trade well enough in the format to really be worth it. Notably, Basculegion male is banned by usage. Not by usage, sorry. Basculegion M is like notably banned because it was like really just genuinely overpowered. You can use Basculegion F, but it like the difference in power is obviously pretty significant. It's definitely usable. I'm not the biggest fan of it, but it's like it's probably usable. You're just gonna get bitched by stuff like Moltres, stuff like Thunderous, Sinistra. It's just a bit of a flood breaker, and it's a bit weak in a lot of scenarios, but it's definitely super usable. We also have Tyranitar. Tyranitar are just on its own. You can use it with or without like X control or whatever. But like Tyranitar is just genuinely really strong. Like Assault Vest sets are really good. They have a lot of really good defensive utility. A lot of times they'll go for like 105 speed and then they'll like adamant. So you run like low kick. A lot of times they're in Terra Blast Fairy. And with like Terra Blast Fairy, you just also a lot of the metagame. Low kick allows you to like hit to actually hit it allows you to actually hit Blood Moon, so you actually outspeed and hit and damage trade pretty well with Blood Moon, things considered. And with Terra Blast Fairy, you wall like Iron Hands and stuff because you're pretty heavy still. Like overall, as a solo weather setter, just like on its own as a solo mod, it's just a pretty like consistent, strong like option. Like weather in this tier in general is pretty solid. There's like a lot of like pretty good options for like I would say all four weathers. The only problem with Sun generally is that like there's a lot of good photosynthesis mons in the tier. Like I would say everybody except for Shocks on this list is viable. Well, the Scrimtail's not really viable in Sun, right? But like all of these are pretty viable, and there's some pretty decent like prankster Sunny Day setters. Like you can use Murkrow for that. You can definitely use Thunderous for that, and it's like pretty viable. Ninetales Kanto has been experimented with a little bit, but I think it's kind of dog shit. Torkoal is obviously Yusha's banned, so it's not like really relevant here, but Ninetales Kanto is kind of just a shit mon. But like Prankster Sunny Days is still like super usable here. Intimidate. Intimidate in this tier is like kind of suspect. You do have stuff like Arcanine and Gyarados who are like definitely like they have good BST. So it's definitely like they're definitely very usable. I think outside of that, like your options are a little bit suspect. Scrafty is like probably okay. Like Scrafty and Hitmontop are like probably usable, but I don't think they're all that good. Other than that, it's kind of chopped. Obviously Torracat is like usable as well. Yeah, like realistically, all you're gonna see for Intimidate users are like Arcanine, Gyarados, Torracat. Hisuian Arcanine is obviously banned by usage, and Lando T is as well. So as far as Intimidate goes, it's really just those three. And even then, I wouldn't say Intimidate's particularly common, just because I think Gyarados is kind of specific, and like Arcanine and Torracat are just not the most valuable pieces in the world. I do want to mention one more mod. I think I haven't mentioned Ogerpon at all. This guy's pretty underwhelming in practice. Like its tools on paper are pretty solid. I just find like on a game to game basis, it just doesn't really get a lot of value. Just because it's like it's a bit weak, and like follow me is really nice, but there's also some other pretty good follow me users in the format. Like we do have like Masel's not very great, but like Electabuzz and Magmar are both like definitely are definitely like very solid options, and are definitely like both super usable. And we obviously the it faces pretty big competition as a grass type from like Bonnet and Zinni, so it's a bit harder to fit on teams. It's definitely still like viable, but it's just not. It just doesn't get as much value as a lot of other mons in this tier. But yeah, that's a probably yeah. I think that's everything. I will say, the format like literally anything with like a good BST has a pretty decent shot of being like workable at the very least. Heatran in and of itself is also like a really solid offensive piece in the tier. Being able to wall stuff like what are the fire type attack? Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, walling stuff like Arcanine, Entei as well, forcing that to click Stomping Tantrum, making Choice Band, just invalidating Choice Band Entei generally, because you're forcing it to lock into Stomping Tantrum, which it just does not want to be locked into, is really good. It also just has like it has a good stab in the metagame. It's one of the few mons. It's one of the few like actually viable steel types in the tier. Like if you look at the like steel types in the tier, Archalon's okay, but it doesn't like really. The problem with Archalon is it doesn't really actually offer you a lot of the defensive utility of a steel type. Bronzong is usable. It's a bit passive and a bit specific, but it's definitely usable. I would say probably about the same thing with Corv, but like Bronzong and Corv are definitely not very common. I don't think they're very great either. Drill is good, but it's more like an offensive piece relegated to sand. It's Heatran, obviously, and then Metagross. And outside of that, like all the other options are pretty bad. Metagross has obviously we talked about Metagross earlier, but it is a really solid niche for being able to deal with Valiant super well, and also for hitting Okidogi super hard. But generally, like you're not gonna have a lot of steel types in the format, and Heatran also being able to hit some both of the like really viable steel types. Like all three of the like actually viable steel types, like Excadrill, Heatran, and Metagross are all like if you notice are all pretty capable of hitting Iron Hands. Like Heatran's Earth Power, Metagross is obviously Psychic typing, you just Psychic Fangs it, and then like Excadrill is obviously just a ground type. It can go click its ground type stab, right? So I think something to note is that like if your steel type is kind of helpless against Iron Hands, it's just not a very good steel type in the tier. Just because like if we're being honest, Iron Hands is basically the undisputed number one in this tier. Like it is just straight up the best, most consistent mod in the tier by a lot. And I don't think it's particularly close, just because there's not really a lot of mons that just add consistent value to a team like Iron Hands. The only mon that really gives it a run for its money as far as like slotting goes is actually Okidogi. Um, and even then, like Okidogi does not have fake out. Like if this is just probably the best. There's no real like other great fake out clickers in the tier other than Iron Hands. So it kind of has a monopoly on clicking fake out. It's definitely the best mon in the tier. However, there's a lot of like really distinctive counterplay to it. It's very liable to get overwhelmed by, especially by Valiant. Like the dynamic between specifically like Hands, Valiant, Bonnet, Blood Moon, and Okidogi is really like important. Like these are all just like basically like if I had to show you the most like defining mons in the tier, it would be these guys. It would just be Hands, Bonnet, Dogi, Okidogi, Valiant. Like these are probably just the mons you're gonna see put in the most work on a game to game basis. Like Spore is just so influential in the builder. I think a lot of teams are come very prepped into Spore, so Bonnet doesn't necessarily get as much value as it could on a game to game basis because people do genuinely respect Spore a lot. But I think it's very easy in this tier to not to neglect your Spore matchup just because there's a lot of other things you have to worry about in the builder. So I think it's very easy for Bonnet to find matchups where it just gets an outsized amount of value. Hands is just, yeah, we talked about hands already. And then Blood Moon is just the damage ceiling for the tier. It being able to outspeed hands is really good for it. Turn on Blood Moon is just like such a nuke button. Like there's like almost nothing in the tier outside of some really bulky AV guys and like Calm Moltres that actually like stand up to it. Dogi is like the only mon that actually really gives Iron Hands solid competition for the fighting type role outside of Valiant, but that's not a real fighting type, it's a fairy type. And then of course Valiant, which is just this, basically it's the fastest, or it's one of the fastest special attackers that's relevant. Obviously we have Iron Bundle as well, but this guy just has such a chokehold over the builder because of how like difficult its stabs are to prep around. And it also is like just such significant coverage that's very hard to just deal with like in the builder with one slot. But yeah, so that's a bit of a guide to, or a brief overview of the like current state of the Reg F metagame, and just exploring like a lot of the options that you can use. I think the biggest and like I think the biggest trouble with picking up a UU format generally is finding out how to fill out a team with all of the options you would want on a team, because obviously in like, for example, in regular regulation F, if you want fake out intimidate, you have Incineroar. If you want spore, you have Amoonguss. Like here, your options for fake out are so much more stratified. You can't, like the role compression that exists on a lot of the top mons in regular regulation F OU just don't exist in the tier. So you have to be a lot more creative with putting together pieces that actually synergize well. And it makes it a lot harder to build because your toolbox is limited. It's just straight up. It is. It's limited. And as a result of that, you have to work with more creative pieces. You have to actually like you have to build a lot more like with a lot more synergy in mind than you would in Reg F. Like a lot of times I think in Reg F, you can just get carried by the fact that like, oh, I'm using broken fake out, broken intimidate, broken, you know, I'm using broken Incineroar, Mungus, or Shifu Landorus, you know? Like, I'm using the broken Pokemon because they are broken. Whereas here, you have to be a lot, like, obviously, you know, Iron Hands is broken. Blood Moon is broken. Like, these mons definitely have an outsized influence in the builder. They're definitely, like, some of the strongest mons in the tier. They're definitely, like, probably stronger than the vast majority of the format. However, your options are restricted in a way that I don't think any of these are particularly overwhelming on a game by game basis because you do it does force you to think a little creatively and get outside of the box a bit. But I think that's one of the things that makes this format really unique and really fun. It's just that like obviously in addition to not having to play the same old like T-Wave Flutter Slop and not having to deal with Urshifu or whatever, like that's fun too. But being able to use like some of the more overlooked options, some of the more like I mean honestly like Moltres Galar, like Nasty Plot Moltres is like super fun. It's just such a fun mod to use. The gameplay loop of it is so cool to me. Heatran, it's just such a fun mod. It's such a cool mod. I'm really sad that like it's kind of fallen out of favor post Regulation E. But like in this tier, it's actually able to like thrive. I just think one of the reasons I enjoy the format so much is just that because you're able to do that. But yeah, so this is just a brief building overview for the tier before UMCL. I'm expecting to see a lot of development coming into UMCL because we're actually getting good players to play it, so it's like, lol. Yeah, but I'm low-key sick, so please wish me a speedy recovery because I'm getting low-key fucking owned. I'm sure you can hear it in my voice right now because I'm getting like, yeah, I'm getting massively owned. I'm definitely gonna have to edit out multiple coughs there at this video, but yeah, anyways. Yeah, so this has been the Jeff YouTube channel. Please, like, subscribe, do the YouTube stuff, That'd be kind of cool if you did that. Anyways, GG. That's the video.